Okay, so we are going to start on step 4, just a little past the beginning. Does anyone remember where we left off? I think we left off just after the first 3 columns of the resentments. Okay. Thanks, Robin. Okay, I'm going to touch base a little bit and just kind of touch base and go over. Hopefully I don't spend too much time here going over it again. But I just wanted to, page 64, therefore, first full paragraph. Hi, Amanda. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. Before that, go back to the top, though our decision was a vital and crucial step. This decision of step 3, when we get down, so you new guys in treatment, you're going to do a step 3 prayer. You're going to try to understand what it means to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. The thing about doing that at step 3 is you don't really know what your will is anyway. So it's hard to really know what your will and your life is and turning it over to the care of God. You might have a deep intention to do that, and that's really good, and that's a good start. Like the book says, that's only a beginning. So we want this decision to take effect. And it won't take effect unless we clear the shit that's in us, okay? And it says here, this was a vital and crucial step. Vital means very important, and it also comes from the word vitality. So when you get good at learning how to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, you live really well. You live vitally. You live full of life. That's really, when the book talks about restoring us to sanity, and that means I don't drink anymore and I'm restored to sanity. That's the barest beginning of the sanity. That's the barest beginning. Real sanity is turning your will and your life over to the care of God. And when you get good at that, then life gets real good. The problem with doing that is it's hard to do. So as we get into the step 6, we will talk a lot about how hard it is to do, and we'll touch base on it tonight too. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here. Crucial step. It could have a little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of things in ourselves that block us. We're to face these things and be rid of these things because they're blocking us off from God. And when you think about it like this, okay, you got God inside you. We agnostics said it very clearly. The fundamental idea of God is within every man, woman, and child. But it's often obscured by calamity, pomp, and worship of other things. Obscured doesn't mean it's gone. Obscured means that it's hard to see. Every now and then we needed and wanted God, and we all do. This is right out of Bill's story. Bill needed and wanted God, but it was soon blotted out by worldly clamors, most of those within himself. So the worldly clamors, worldly means non-spiritual. Worldly clamors within ourselves block the need and want of God. So we need to clear these things out of the way so we can get some type of connection. So our liquor was but a symptom. So anyone new in recovery and you think you got a drug and alcohol problem, no, you don't. You got a drug and alcohol solution that doesn't work anymore. And that's a symptom of the deeper rooted shit, which we call the spiritual malady. It's called the spiritual malady, it's called self, and it's called restless, irritable discontent. Those things all mean the exact same. I'm going to refer to it more often than not as the malady or self. Every time you hear me hear self, that's what I mean, malady or restless, irritable discontent. So we had to get down to the causes and conditions. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business, you're the business, which takes no regular inventory. We've never taken regular inventory, but we've always taken other people's inventory, right? I always know what's wrong with everybody else. My whole life, I can tell you what's happening with everybody else, right? And I could pull up my Facebook feed right now and show you how many people are taking other people's inventory. It's crazy. Anyone know where my phone is? Lucy? No, I'm serious. Anyway, let's keep going. You need a big book? No. Okay, sorry about that. A little distracted. I guess I'm addicted to my phone. Okay. So a business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. So a lot of times we come into recovery and we can be in recovery and think about broke. It's like bankrupt. I'm spiritually, emotionally, mentally bankrupt. Other people bankrupt me and I always blame them for taking my energy and making me feel not good, right? And really, it's not other people that don't make you feel good. It's your spiritual fitness that allows you to let them take that from you. And so the goal is to not let that happen, which will happen if you learn how to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. And it doesn't mean that you just guess what God's will is. That will not do the trick. The processes in the big book will allow you to turn it over. But if you don't do the processes, you are living theoretically on God's will, and then it diminishes, and then you struggle with life. Anyway, let's keep going. So taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding, fact-facing mission process. It is an effort to discover the truth about stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods and get rid of them promptly without regret. So let's go back. Fact finding. That's what the 4 does. You start writing down facts out of your life, okay? And we start facing the facts. But the facts that we're going to face are going to be different than what we've always lived with, because we live with 100 forms of fear and self-delusion, and we can manipulate anything in our minds to suit whatever it is that we want and that we think we need, okay? So it's an effort to discover the truth about stock in trade. One of my favorite lines in the big book, okay? The truth about stock in trade. Think about that. You go in your cupboard, you open it up, and you get to see what's there. Well, what we're doing is we're going in the cupboard, which is us. We're going to open it up and see what's there. What selfishness is there? What self-seeking is there? What judgments are there? What ideas are there? What resentments are there? What behaviors are there? What stock is in me that I'm trading with you? Because the stock that's in me that I'm trading with you is actually causing my failure, because it's based out of the spiritual malady more often than not. So only one object is to find these damaged and unsaleable goods and discard them promptly without regret. But we got to identify them. The only way you go through like a cupboard and to see what's damaged or unsaleable is you got to go and you got to look at the can, see if it's damaged, look at the expiry date. You got to do some work and really look at what's in there and then throw away what's not good. You don't want to eat a can of soup that's from 1972. You're going to get sick. Well, it's the same with the resentment that you're pulling out of your own cupboard within yourself. You don't want to live with resentment, and you're going to see that it's made you spiritually sick. Judgment, self-worth issues, old trauma that hasn't been dealt with, all sorts of things. And what I really like to talk about is belief systems. Every single thought that you have is based in a belief system. We might not know that because we just live life and think that things are the way they are without even any thought. Right? Who says that, working 5 days a week for 8 hours a day is actually a good thing? Well, that's all we've ever known. Everyone thinks that that's the way life is. Everyone thinks that you're supposed to go to university and get a degree and have all these, accolades behind you. Who fucking says that? Who controls that? Well, the government controls that. Is that really the best thing for us? On the way to get the degree, and you sell your soul for all these things to get the degree, is that best for what's inside you? But you're going to step on the toes of your fellows to get this degree. Why? Because we have a disease in society of validation. We need to be accepted by others with what we do, what we look like, how we are. And we got to look at these belief systems to see which ones that we think are good actually aren't serving us. These are damaged, unsaleable goods. It's easy for all of us to go, I don't like that about myself. That's got to go. I don't like that about myself. That's got to go. And then we want to get rid of only the things that we think are bad for us because we think they're bad. So they got to go. But some of the things that also block you from God are things that you think are good for you. What stories have you told yourself? You know, this is just the way I am. I'm just quiet. I'm just shy. I'm just. Well, maybe you're quiet and shy because you're afraid of confronting the world. Maybe you're quiet and shy because you're afraid of the conflict that might come if you fucking spoke up and stood in a piece of your truth. Yeah, you might avoid the conflict in the world with people, but you never avoid the conflict between your own ears because that's where the conflict is. You know, in step 10 where it says we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol? Well, we start by I quit fighting you. And then as I keep going down this path and work the process of 10, I'll quit fighting me. And once I quit fighting me, I will never fight you. And then I don't need to fight alcohol. But that's a process, and it takes time, takes commitment, and it takes some fucking pain to do the things that you need to do to not react. But step 6 will kind of describe all that. So get rid of them promptly without regret. If the owner, of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about the values. I fooled myself about the values that I lived with my whole life. I thought my anger was actually a great tool to kind of get what I wanted. I thought working hard for 15 hours a day, 7 days a week was a really good way to get what society told me, what was going to make me happy. I learned from a young age that if you work hard and you make money and you find the right woman and you get the right car and you're supposed to be happy. Didn't the commercials say that? I seen a lot of commercials that told me what was going to make me happy. And I tried to go do that. The reality is it didn't really make me happy. You know, the only thing when I really look back, because I had major anger issues. I quit drinking when I was 22. I still smoked weed. I still needed relief. I still did really stupid shit. But the only thing that really made me like truly happy in the moments that I could be was my family. Why? Because the fundamental idea of God lies within love. And my family, I loved my family and they loved me. And there was these moments where I could be present with my family because God only exists now and love is God. And so when I was in those moments, I felt God. But there was a lot of other things in my life that I wasn't happy about. And I would really go to extremes to get those things like money and status. Those were the two big ones for me. And like my ex-wife is in the crowd today and my daughter, and they would probably vouch to say that like today, my anger is like this big compared to like what I used to be. Like, look at my wife, she's nodding. I used to be fucking so violent and angry. Like they were in my car or truck many times where I was in high-speed chases, and the high-speed chase wasn't somebody chasing me. It was me chasing somebody else because they cut me off. And I was a road rager, really, really bad. And a savage fighter. See, she likes that part, right? But I don't like that part anymore. But I told myself I had to be tough to get through life. And maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But, you know, what I went through, it just made me fight. And I didn't want to always fight. I remember specific fights. I never wanted to ever fight. I almost never threw the first punch because the God inside me never wanted me to hurt anybody. But if you punched me, then I would fight because I needed to stand up for myself that way, I thought. And then I would always get it validated from other people because they thought that that was the right thing to do too. The thing about our journey is we do everything counter to the culture we live in. We're going to do things differently than what normal society does. And we're going to be frowned upon by doing it that way because it's not normal. And like also when I started growing and changing, my family got mad at me because I was changing. And they didn't know what was going on because I was changing so much. They were like, who the fuck are you? And I remember my daughter saying, you're not even my dad. You're not the dad I know. And I felt bad about that because I was changing and I didn't even know what was happening. But with the consistent, persistent commitment to change, they've come around, and there's still a lot of work for us to do as a family unit. But I'm a much better person today, and I'm not going back to the old ways. And I know that I don't get triggered, and I know that my body's healed because I can be put in those situations. My body doesn't react like it used to because the cells of my body have healed because of what we're doing here. So he cannot fool himself about the values. So we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly, which we can't do by ourselves. You cannot take personal inventory, stock honestly by yourself because you have conscious and subconscious blocks that will rationalize, and bullshit you. Your actions and your inaction. So, first we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. So the flaws within my makeup cause my failure. The things that I don't even see or know. Just what I think and live by. Me acting certain ways. Me prying and grabbing and snatching out of life. I don't even know I'm doing it though. I don't have any awareness to the way that I lived. So being convinced that self has manifested itself in various ways is what defeated us. So self, the problem. It manifests itself in various ways. That's what defeats me. And I'll say it like this. My whole life, whenever I'd get fucked over, I always was like, that guy, that bitch, that company, that. And I always thought, you fucked me. And then I realized as I stayed here and I did the work, you didn't fuck me. I fuck me. I fuck me every single fucking time. And I learned that with years of practicing this. If you guys know me on Facebook, you'll see my feeds. I don't fucking blame nobody. I don't blame anybody for anything. I fucking take personal responsibility for everything in my life. My ex-wife might disagree a little bit, but she's not behind the mic. No, and I'm not perfect. I get in arguments, and me and Lucy had an argument not long ago, and shit happens, right? But we all have working our own programs, and we can always come back and we can get good with each other again. So I think that's growth, and as we keep moving, we'll get better at it. Will we ever be perfect at it? No. And it's the family that triggers us the most, right? So if you're new in recovery and you go back to your old place where you have been drinking in your old environment, bad move, very bad move. You want to stay in environments that are conducive to your own personal well-being and growth. And even though you might think that you've changed so much that you will never drink again, the reality is you haven't. So many guys come into recovery and they do 3 months or 4 months and they change a lot. The doctor's opinion says we need an entire psychic change. The problem with the entire psychic change is because I lived my life a certain way for so long and I change a little bit in recovery to begin with, I've only changed 30%, but it feels like 100%. And I believe that I'm a different person. I'm never going to drink again. The reality is no, you fucking changed 30%. Maybe 40% if you're lucky. It takes time to get to 70% of psychic change, which I'm going to say is a year or two. And then as you have taken a year or two of time to work on yourself, now you're at 70, 75, 80% of the psychic change. You've had enough time to see things and you'll be like, I don't want that. I recoil from your negative attitude or your words or this way of life as from a hot flame. And you start doing things that are conducive to your own love for yourself and you heal. The couple things that block that off, straight away, relationships. You get in an intimate relationship too early, or you go back to another relationship in your life, i.e. family, you block the healing right there. Because the knots of self inside you need to loosen and they need to be undone. You go back into a relationship and now your defects are trying to get what it wants. You go back to your old family life. the knots tighten again. And then slowly it's like 30%, 29%, 28%, or you might even have a 60% psychic change, but it starts reversing. You got to get solid in your recovery first. And then you'll get able to go, no, I don't want that. No, I don't want that. How do we stay honest though? Because I can rationalize, justify anything in my life to suit every action and inaction. And I still have broken parts and I want to share my life with somebody, so I will lie to myself to get in a relationship. How do we avoid the dishonesty? Because there's really no inventory in this book for honesty. How we get honest is we have to have God-centered 12-step pillars, and we talk to these people and we tell them about our lives. And then they can see the truth. And if they care more about your life than your feelings, they will tell you the truth. You might not like it. And your old behaviors might come up and you say, fuck you. I don't want to hear that. And then you go over here and you find someone to co-sign your shit. It's easy to find someone to co-sign your shit because everybody in society lives that way. So just, a couple important points. So, being convinced self-manifests itself in various ways is what defeated us. Fuck me. We considered its common manifestations. I touched on this last time. I'm considering common manifestations of self. And if you know the book, it starts with 3. Resentments, fear, sex conduct. Those are the common manifestations of self. I always say, what about the uncommon ones? What about the uncommon shit? Anyone here done multiple sets of steps and seen the common manifestations of self? Okay, yeah. Okay, what about the uncommon shit? That's way more important to you guys than the common shit. Common shit's good for anyone new, gives you a start on understanding self, but it is by no means gonna solve your problem as an addict, and you don't actually have an addiction problem, you got a thinking problem. At a certain point, the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first drink. No, it's the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first think. And we have to combat the thinking through the process. What's the process? Step 10. Continue to watch for what am I thinking, what am I feeling? And then we go from there. Ask God to remove it. Talk to somebody immediately. It's right in the directions, man. It's right in the directions. And then it says we make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. If you're following that process, if is big because you probably won't harm people. And then the last part is we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. So you take that whole process and you finish it off with resolutely turning your thoughts to someone we can help. Again, I'll hammer it home. Resolutely, what does it mean? It means in an admirably purposeful, determined, and unwavering manner. You now pray for somebody else. And how do you do that? Well, in my experience, I used to do that. And I would pray for 5 or 10 seconds, and it meant almost nothing. How do you, in an admirably purposeful, determined, and unwavering manner, pray for somebody? Time. You put in 30-second prayers. You put in 1-minute prayers. You get real serious about making prayer for the person who needs the prayer, whether it be the one who hurt you or the resentment that you have or just some person, because you can always find somebody to pray for. But resolutely is key to that process. And when you have the first think, it's always usually about you and what you're not getting or what somebody else is doing. Where am I selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate, afraid, judgmental, resentful, whatever it is? But it always has to do with you. So you're always triggered by the thought of you. You follow the process, you get closer to God, and then you finish it with somebody else. The solution is always outside of yourself. And the problem always starts inside of ourselves, because that's where the stock and trade is. Okay, so quickly go over these first 3 columns again. The one line I'll highlight here, resentment, number 1 offender, destroys more alcoholics than anything else. I don't want to get into that too much. But anyone new, resentment, number 1 offender, it'll fucking kill you. It'll take you back out. And from it, like it says here, stem all forms of spiritual disease. You'll get so sick living in resentments. But the world lives in resentments, man. Look at society. Look at politics. Look at everything. Look at Facebook. Resentments are fucking not where we want to live. Very difficult to rid yourself because that's where we've lived our whole life. But down here it says, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. So that's what we focus on. All my sponsorship for all these years, I focus on the malady. I don't focus on the substance. When I focus on the malady, the think, then the drink never comes. Never have to worry about it. So, the first column. In dealing with resentments, we listed them on paper. People, institutions, principles with whom we were angry. I always say take angry, because you all have a belief of what you think anger is. And a lot of us don't want to be angry. So like a depressive alcoholic won't even think they're angry. And people who don't really attack others are like, well, I'm not really angry. I'm not really resentful. That's why you take angry and you look up synonyms and you find agitated, annoyed, frustrated, all these other symptoms of anger, and you'll have a whole list of people after that. Because your mind goes to an angry concept, and you don't want to be that. So it just helps expand and gives you more data in your inventory process. That's just for what I've learned out of experience. 2, we ask ourselves why we were angry. Why am I angry? That's the second column. Most cases found it was our self-esteem. We were hurt. Somebody hurt our pride. They said something about us, or they did something to us, or we thought they did. Maybe they gave us a look where they looked us up and down, and we thought they were judging us, and then but do we really know they looked us up and down and judged us? Maybe I have something on me, or who knows? But we'll take that shit personally, and then we'll spread it all around and make it bigger than it actually is. That's what we do. That's what lots of humans do, but we do it real good. So our pocketbooks, money, people fuck you over for money, or so you think. Ambitions, personal relations, including sex. We were hurt, we were threatened, so we were sore, we were burned up. 3 on our grudge list, we set up at each name our injuries, whether it's our self-esteem, security, our ambitions, our personal sex relations would have been interfered with. When you do these first 3 columns, I'm going to go through these. I'm resentful at the cause and affects my. You see Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and my wife. You just write down the person's name, leave some space, and then you just write down point form, very simply, what the resentment is. I always max it out for the people I work with at 5. Why? Because an alcoholic always wants to talk about the problem. And if you give them the whole page, they'll write a whole page on resentments, and then they're kind of reliving the fucking thing. And they're not really getting anywhere. So you keep it short and sweet. Give me 5, point form. Maybe you want 8, whatever it is. But these are point form. And then affects my, sex relations, self-esteem, fear. And you see up here, it said on our grudge list, that last little bit of the paragraph, self-esteem, security, ambitions, personal or sex relations, that's your only choices. Yes, I'll explain that to you when you go through the step 4. I'll explain it to you, but you don't make up your own. That's why we follow the process. We don't change the process. We don't make up our own. And then you put that in your other column. And for many of your resentments, let's say it's your mom or your dad or family members, you're going to have the same things over and over and over. It's going to be self-esteem. It's going to be, security. The security one is kind of expansive because it involves personal security, physical security, financial security, emotional security. So security can be expanded on, but nonetheless, we just write down what's up there. And what I want to point out about these first 3 columns, anyone who's having a hard time writing these first 3 columns, just walk back through your whole life. Start in when you were a kid. Think about all the relationships that you had. Think about each person one by one who you had a relationship with. Walk through school. Walk through your teenage years. And then you're going to have a list. And then what you'll see about your list is you've lived this shit all your life anyway. I always knew you fucked me. I knew who you were. I knew what you did. And I know that you hurt me. I know that, man. I've always known that. But some of the hurt and some of what you did is actually not true. And I never would realize that until I have a process to actually go through it. Then I start seeing it. But the first 3 columns should be simple. Because we all lived that way. We all lived it. We still live it. And maybe you're in recovery and you're not doing inventory and you're miserable or you're still fighting everyone and everything. Well, fuck, man, we got an inventory process. That's the beginning. And then we do it with somebody to help with the honesty part. And the honesty part's massive because when you look at the steps, the first step principle is honesty. If you don't base your life on rigorous honesty, the word rigorous means accurate. If you're not accurately honest on the first step and you start building a set of steps, you're crooked right off the bat. Good luck fucking walking up a set of crooked steps for very long because they fall over, which is why the foundation of God has to be built on rigorous honesty. And some people learn the long, hard way. They're not honest. They can't do the things and then they drink or they suffer because the honesty won't allow the rest of the steps to take properly. Without honesty as the foundation, the other steps don't really take properly. And there's a lot of discord if you are even able to stay sober. But most of the new guys, first 2 or 3 years in recovery, you guys won't even stay sober. So fucking doesn't even matter. And I'll say this again too, like, you know, let's say 100, we have 100 new guys here. You guys all did the steps or whatever. Like probably not many of you will stay sober for like the first 2 years, 5 maybe, for a couple years. And then half of that will stay sober for 5 years. And that's like pretty accurate. That's pretty accurate. And most people will not even make 2 years, so they'll just keep relapsing. And in today's world, like it's life and death, right? I'm just going to share something. So this guy called me tonight about, this guy went to Simon House about a year ago. I saw him around. And then one day after a Garnet meeting, he comes over to me and he's like, hey, bro, fucking, I really like what you had to say. You don't beat around the bush and you tell it like it is. And, you know, I just want to say I really appreciate that. And, you know, we got to know each other a bit. And then he gravitated towards me and he said he can't, like, he wants the real truth. And so we connected. I hooked him up with a sponsor who's a good friend of mine, and he's pretty raw too. And this guy said, I'll do anything you fucking say. I'll do anything for my sobriety. I'll do anything. I do anything. And he was willing to do anything until he wasn't. So then what happened? Started doing his own sets of steps, however he wanted to. Quit calling his sponsor. Disconnected from me. I'm not chasing the guy either. It's not my job. There's enough people that want help that I don't need to go chase somebody. And then he hooked up with a woman in recovery. And then guess what? The wheels fall off, right? And then today he called me and he's fucked right up on fent, heroin. He's going to die. Just got a whack of cash. He's got more money than he knows what to do with. And I don't know what to tell him. And like, even when he first called me today, I picked up my phone because I was busy and I see that I just got fucking phone bombed for like an hour. He called me like 10 times. So I finally, when I had a moment, I called him back. And then right away, it's just the same old shit. And I'm just like, bro. He's like, you got to help me. I said, I'll fucking help you, bro, but you don't listen, man. You do whatever the fuck you want to do. How do I help somebody that doesn't want their own help? How do you help somebody that just does whatever they want to do? You can't. So I fucking lost it on him, and then he hung up on me. And then I realized I probably handled that wrong. In a way I did, but in a way I didn't. Okay? And I'll explain that. So then I called him back. Like I waited for like 20 minutes. And I was like, yeah, I saw ego in there and I saw some things that I didn't like. And, you know, and I didn't really even give him a chance. I was already like not happy with him as soon as I saw his call. And someone's messaging me, say, answer this guy. And I'm like, fuck, man, I've answered this guy 100 times. He fucking just always does what he wants and complains about his life all the time when he calls me. But he won't change. So I called him. So a little bit of my defects, right? And so I call him and then I apologized and I said, I'm really sorry for how I acted and reacted. And then we got over that quickly. And then we're talking about how to get him help. And I don't know how to get him help. He's in his cups, man. I don't even know what to do. I can call him tonight when I'm off the line here. But there's nothing I can do, man. I said, dude, I'm talking to you. You're high as a kite. I need you to be sober, dude. Like, even for me to have a conversation, I need you to be sober. He's not going to breathe a sober breath right now because he's got too much money and the allergy of the body is consuming him. So I don't even know what to do, right? This is like reality, live action today in my life, right? It's crazy. So anyway, I want to finish the fourth column part of this resentments before we take a break here. So we got some time. So I'm going to read fairly quickly. For the new guys, I usually would spend more time on this. We already kind of hammered some of this out already, but I won't spend a lot of time in it. If you want more time in this, I do have a podcast. You can go on my podcast, listen to old episodes, and I go way slower, and Jesse's other people are in there, and they'll talk about it too. So anyway, bottom of 65. So once we have the list and it's written out at the guidance of our sponsor, and the first 3 columns should take about 2 weeks, maybe a week, but you should have 2 weeks. I would give you 2 weeks to do that. And then I review it to make sure that you did it right, not your own way. And if you didn't do it right, I would make you change it or do it again. Why? Because it's really important, because the alcoholic always wants to do shit their way. If they come to me with a computer, step 4, not happening. You know, a Word document, step 4, for me, it's not happening. There's something about taking a pen and writing things down that has a psychological connection to your heart, to your subconscious, and to that pen and paper. And it does something. And where it says, you know, affects my sex relation, self-esteem, no abbreviations. If self-esteem is on there 100 fucking times, you're writing it 100 times. Why? Because I want your brain to hit your subconscious in this pen, and I want to see that you're writing what's hurting you 100 times. Because there's things that happen in us that we can't explain, but I've seen that that's very effective. You start making abbreviations or you're in treatment and you got check boxes, just doesn't hit the same. Doesn't hit the same. Okay. So we went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was this world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong as far as most of us ever got. And that's true. And we can still get there in recovery and just stay there. Think about staying there. You're on page 66 of a 12-step program. You're in step 4. And to conclude that others are wrong is as far as you get, page 66, and live there? How much fun would that be? Fuck none. The usual outcome is that people continued to wrong us, and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have it our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. The victor only seemed to win. They always seem to win. The government seems to win. The insurance company seemed to win. The treatment center seemed to win. They kicked me out again. Fuckers. You know, what about that other guy that was in there? He was doing the same thing as me. Blah, 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 blah. Shut up. It's like, take responsibility for your own shit And Creator knows the lesson you need to learn. Maybe he was doing the same thing as you, but you have a different set of soul lessons than that guy. And for whatever reason this happened to you, that's where we are. That's how we have to look at things. Because the world doesn't work like in these boxes like we've been taught and how we think. It is plain. I'm going to take a survey here, or at least ask a couple people. It is plain that life, which includes deep resentment, only leads to futility and unhappiness. Has anyone here lived in deep resentment for a long time? Holy shit. Okay. So here it says, it only leads to futility and unhappiness. Is that true, Amanda? Yeah, that's true. It doesn't do anything. There's no benefit of resentments. And for us, it's poison, and it will take us back to the drink. Like, I know that in the program, like in the meetings and things, you guys will hear, oh, anger's an emotion. You got to feel it, and you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be angry. Dude, the book doesn't say that at all. It says the exact opposite. We're not allowed to be. We can feel the feeling, but we got to learn what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, and not just leave it at, oh, I'm allowed to be angry. So that's just resisting. Resisting always persists. Whatever you resist always persists. And all through this literature, it talks about the grouch and the brainstorm is a dubious luxury of normal people. You know, self-restraint takes top priority rating. Like all through this literature, it talks about anger's not really a go-to place for us. But it is a symptom that we can grow and learn from. But we can't just leave it at that, because it leads to what we just read, and worse. And this is an awesome line. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? So it's saying, just to the extent that you permit resentment, you permit it, you allow it, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? The life that I could live, I'm squandering it away because I won't give up the resentment. And I have the choice. Am I willing to give it up or not? Am I willing to forgive? And it's one thing to forgive of the mind and say you forgive, but that's not enough. That doesn't really do the trick fully, but it's a good start. But through the processes, like you can start praying resolutely, turning your thoughts to someone you can help. You can pray, right? Does anyone know what the word ritual means by definition? Yeah. So in the dictionary, it says a ceremony that's done over and over. So you do the rituals. Praying for somebody is a ceremony. The precepts in this book are all ceremonies. They're spiritual by nature. Think of the word spiritual. This is a spiritual program of action. It's the rituals that are done over and over and over that take you to spiritual. Ritual, spiritual. And whether you're spiritual or not in any given moment or run of life, that's not the real concern. The important thing is that you do the rituals. Through the rituals, everything changes. But if you don't do the rituals, which is why morning prayer and meditation is so important, because it hits your subconscious. I think it's like 8 hertz per second is what your brain's functioning at. So you are praying and you're hitting the subconscious and you're actually changing the behaviors because it's your subconscious that runs your life anyway. Your conscious mind doesn't fucking run your life. Like 5% of your life, maybe, what you think you're doing, you're driven by 100 forms of fear and self-delusion. And that comes from the subconscious. And you'll see way more of that as we get into the 6 as well. So, but with the alcoholic, whose hope is maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. Again, there it is. It's a no-go zone, man. We have found that it is fatal. It is fatal. Take you out. I work in First Nations communities. And there's a lot of resentment there towards white people, towards each other, towards chief and councils, towards. And our nations are riddled with drugs and alcohol, spiritual malady. And it's everywhere. And most people don't know how bad it is. But until you get to do a job like mine and you're in community and you get to see how bad it is, it's really, really sad. But there's nothing anyone can do because everyone's kind of living like that there. And all the nations, it's like that everywhere. And it's like that in our society too, but not quite to the extreme. For we found it is fatal. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off to the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. And the insanity of alcohol. Okay, the word insanity, you think it means something, but in the chapter there's a solution. It talks about whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. So it's saying something. Whatever the precise definition of the word is, we call this plain insanity. Preceding that line, it talks about knowing what's going to happen. You pick up the drink anyway. Having a mental defense that you know what's going to happen, or you're going to lose your kids, you're going to lose your job or whatever, you still do it anyway. That's the insanity. So, the insanity, the blank spot, the inability to bring to consciousness in that moment what's going to happen, that will happen and you will drink. It's the insanity. You don't have the power to choose. No alcoholic in here chooses to drink or drug. Your spiritual conditioning will not allow you to have the choice. Your brain's wired to get relief. You need it now. It's always giving it to me. Thanks. Boom, alcohol. Which is why the doctor and the doctor's opinion says we need an entire psychic change. Why? Entire psychic change is a rearrangement of how you think. Why? Because the way you think right now will always trigger the relief in your subconscious and you will pick it up. And you might even think that you are picking it up. And if you still think you are picking it up, you will create layers upon layers and upon layers of shame and guilt, which makes you actually need it more and you're more powerless. So you don't have the power to choose. Any alcoholic who says, you know what, I just chose. Well, it might have looked like he chose, but the reality is he wasn't in fit spiritual conditioning and the drink chose him. The drug chooses us. And we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. Anyone agree? Everyone. Almost in unison. Yep. Well, pretty much. And if you're not dead, like physically, you're fucking dead inside. Who wants to live like that? It's almost better to just be dead than live like that. And like that can happen in sobriety, not drinking. That can happen to normal people that don't have a solution, that are living in the spiritual malady. Like men's suicide rates are skyrocketed. Women too, but men for sure. And a lot of them aren't even alcoholics and addicts. Why? Because they live in the spiritual malady and they don't know what to do. And they don't have, like we hit the jackpot. You guys, anyone new in here? Like you hit the fucking lottery. This is better than $1 million. This way of life will change your whole life. And you won't care about the things that you cared about because they don't really matter anyway. What will matter is fucking helping God's kids. That'll matter. And then when you help God's kids, it's funny how some money comes and some good people come and everything kind of works itself out anyway. What do we got? Okay. Before I finish this, I want to. Okay, I'm a pipe carrier. Okay, in my culture, I never fucking followed my culture ever. I didn't want to be Indian. Fucking tried to rub it off my skin when I was a kid, and went full on, not knowing, but I went full westernized. because I did not want to be Indian. So I went full Western, started a company, did all the things, everything I could do to not be Indian, I did. And as I did that, I made myself spiritually sick. Why? Because I am Indigenous and I can't hide the fact of who I am, even though I tried. The reality is, where God lives in me, I can lie to you guys and I can lie to me and my ego, but I can't lie to God. So eventually, if I lie to God too much, I will get real sick. And then I will need something to blot it out. The problem with anything blotting out God is it doesn't work for very long. And you'll always need something else. So I was an alcoholic, and then I made a lot of money, and I had a lot of status, and I fought a lot. And I did a lot of things to kind of like medicate my spiritual malady. And they all worked until they didn't, including alcohol, including money, including status, including buying shiny things. And I always like to say, you know what, I bought a lot of nice things. But the things that I bought, they weren't things that I just bought. That was me. I was the truck. When I pulled up and you were there, I needed you to think that I was the truck. I was the truck. I was my clothes. I was the things that I needed you to believe in me, because I didn't believe it in myself. But I didn't know that then. So, years later, I burned it down with crack cocaine. I burned down my family's life. I fuck everything right up. And then I come into recovery. And then I find this path. And I'm 42 years old when I came in. I didn't know one Indigenous person in my life till I was 43 years old. I wouldn't talk to Indigenous people. I wouldn't give them the time of day, and they'd always come up to me and want to talk to me, and I wouldn't talk to them. And then at 43 years old, I think Shannon and I and my kids, we went to a powwow at Sutina, and then we stood around the powwow circle, and then I felt it. And what's really funny about me feeling like it in my genes and in my body, and I was like, holy shit, this is weird. I am this. This is part of me, I think. And then Shannon was saying, remember when we were kids and you'd go dance at the club, and I used to dance house music? I loved deep house, and she'd come and she wouldn't dance, but she'd watch me dance, and I would just dance. And she said, look at the chicken dancers, you chicken dance and grass dancers at the powwow. She's like, that's how you danced. And I was like, fuck, that's true. Because I had like a real cool style, and people would always comment on it, but I didn't know, like, it just was the way I danced. I didn't know where I got it. I never danced before, but it was in me. And so when Shannon said, look at the chicken dancers and grass dancers, that's how you dance. That's how I danced. And I know that it was in me. And then I started following the path and blah, 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 and I'm doing all these things and doing the program. And then eventually, I started Sundancing. I finished my 4th year this last year. Before the 4th year, about 6 months before my 4th year dance, my teacher at a sweat, he just called me over and he said, Bill, sit down in front of me. And so I sat down in front of him, and then he prayed, and then I was like, holy shit, he's giving me a pipe. I was kind of like scared, because that's a big commitment. The pipe's the most sacred item in our culture, in the world. For our culture, that's the pinnacle. I was like, holy shit, he's giving me a pipe. And so he gives me this pipe, and I was just like, holy shit. And I take it, and I'm like so grateful and a little scared, but I know I can do it. I know that I earned it or whatever. And then I take this pipe. But there was a song that I knew. And I'd learned it as I was escapioing for the lodges that I was helping at. And I'm just going to sing 2 push-ups of this song, and then I'm going to explain it, and then I want to sing a little piece of another song and explain it, and then we'll take a break. So this song is called the Personal Pipe Song. And I'll sing it, and then I'll explain what it is. Just 2 push-ups. Janu pawane jau pelo da zayo yo hey o gnash ma shagnash hey kedo hey wakaya hey wow hey lo hey O Ganashma Shagna Shekedo Hey Janu Bawane Jau Pelo Da Zayo Zayo Yo Hey O Ganashma Yagna Shekedo Hey Wakaya Hey Wa Hey Lo Hey O Ganashma Shagna Shekedo Hey. So what that song means is it's Creator, I have this pipe. I'm going to try. I'm going to do the best that I can. Have pity on me, creators. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to try to grow in the image and likeness of you, creator, but have pity on me, because I'm only human and I'm going to make mistakes. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try my best. And not everyone gets a pipe, right? You got to be sober for one. And if you drink while you have a pipe, you have to give it up. Someone else has to carry it. You can't even have a pipe in the house if there's drugs and alcohol. And I have this pipe, and I committed to that. And it's like a step 6 thing. That's why I bring it up. It's like a step 6 commitment to change. And then there's another song, and it's a Sundance pipe song. And the Sundance pipe song is like when you get a personal pipe, and then let's say you got a Sundance pipe. Let's say I got a Sundance pipe, which I probably will never get. But there's so many years and there's so many lessons in the journey of carrying that pipe and trying to change, that when you get a Sundance pipe, and I'll sing the song. I only know like parts of it, so I'll just sing the parts that I know. Kolale chole cho, kolale chele cho, kolale chole cho, e chanuke. Anyway, so what that song is saying is it's saying, my child, do it like this. My child, do it like this. My child, do it exactly like this. And then it goes on to say, you can have everything you want. You can have anything you want in this world. And you do it like this, and you can have anything you want. So the journey between the personal pipe and the Sundance pipe is you can have anything you want. But what you want is so much different than where you were when you started that it doesn't matter, because you only want good things for the world. And because the humility behind serving Creator in that Sundance pipe, that God knows that you choose good. And if you do choose bad, you're probably in trouble. So that's the journey of what we're doing here, is trying to get to a place where we're living a good life on the red road, or sobriety, or whatever it is. Recovery. The word recovery means the process of getting well from an illness or an injury. The illness and injury that we have is not drugs and alcohol. It's a spiritual malady. And this program will allow you to fix the malady so you never will need to drink again. And you can have anything you want in this life. The problem is you don't know what that really is. But through the journey of this, you will know what it is. The step 3 prayer says, so that I may better show other people thy will. Step 7 prayer. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, the good and the bad. I now pray that you remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to your fellows. Grant me strength. It's a statement. Grant me your strength, Creator, as I go from here to serve your kids, to do your bidding. The word bidding means I surrender in an overly slavish way. Overly slavish means without original thought or idea. There's no reservation to the service. And when you get to that level of service, amen means contract. Then nothing else matters. And then all the things that you tried to get through the ego and fucking resentful and prying out of life, they're delivered upon you, but in the way that you always wanted, but you didn't know that. That's what I see. That's what I've seen. So as we read this material and I talk about like what I see, that's the basic premise. And that's the premise of step 6 and 7. And I'm kind of like teeing up 6 because I love 6 so much. I think it's the most important, but the most beautiful is 7. So I don't know what line made me go through all that shit, but I thought it was important at the time. And we're going to take, let's say like a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and try to finish this never-ending chapter. We'll get back to the podcast in a second. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of the guest sharing or myself. We have no affiliation with any 12-step or recovery program. And if you do like our work, please consider visiting BILLWARDLIFE and supporting what we do. Now back to the podcast. So we're going to get started here at second last paragraph on 66. Okay, Troy. Sounds good. You got it, Troy. Thanks, Troy. I'm just kidding, buddy. Okay. So, if we were to live, we had to be free of the anger. We had to be free of anger. Oops. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. So the word dubious in that sentence means, is it really good anyway? Is it really a dubious luxury? Dubious means, I'm not really sure if it's actually a luxury. But for us, we can't be. It's not for us. It's poison. So as we kind of look at where we're going in the step 4 now, we're going to the 4th column. This is the 4th column is somewhere we've never been before in our lives. And a lot of times, even in recovery, we have a hard time noticing this column in our day-to-day operation of the program. So it's a really important little piece here. So we turn back to the list, for it held the key to our future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We begin to see that the world and its people really dominated us. How do we see that the world and its people dominate us? Through the resentments and how everything outside of us affects our worlds. The world and its people, and people is kind of the world. Everything's a relationship, and typically it's with people because we haven't really built a relationship with Creator too much. You know, we'll go to the mountains once in a while, but we don't like honor and respect all of creation. Right? But we will go out to nature to try to get grounded. So there's something there. What is there? Well, it's love. That just does something to us that makes us feel good. Right? But typically most relationships are with people. So the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, it's not always even real, had the power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not whisk them away any more than alcohol. This was their course. So it's saying, here's your direction. When I talk about the big book, I'm always talking about direction. Here's some clear-cut direction in the big book. This was their course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms, column 2 is the resentments that we have against people. They're spiritually sick. Here's the proof, column 2. And the way that they disturbed us, column 3. This is how it affects me, 3rd column. They, like ourselves, were sick too. They, like ourselves, are sick too. How many, if everyone in your life did a step 4, how many of those step 4s would you be on? Right? Exactly. But we're so selfish and self-centered that we don't think about it like that. We don't think that other people are just struggling with life and they're acting out of their own deficiencies as well. But this program will teach us that compassion, that everybody's doing the same things just like us. Right? They, like ourselves, are sick too. So we ask God, We always go to God. This is like God, God, help me, God, strength, God, your strength. And when I pray, I never pray for God, give me strength. I ask God to give me his strength, her strength. God, give me your power. God, give me your love. Can I borrow some of yours? Because of myself, I'm nothing. But if I have yours, it keeps me small. The minute my subconscious thinks that, okay, give it to me now, I'm going to do it. So for me, I learned that about myself. So I always ask God if I can have his strength. Can I have your power in this situation so I can do something different this time? So we ask God to help us show them what? The same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. In the original manuscript, it says a sick friend with cancer. Why does Bill W. write sick friend with cancer? Because think about somebody in your life that maybe you didn't like, but they were dying. You can't be mad at them when they're dying. So we try to treat sick people like somebody with cancer because you can't really get mad at them like we can when they don't have cancer. So when a person offended, here's the prayer. We said to ourselves, this is a sick man, how may it be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry, thy will be done. This is the resentment prayer. And a lot of people in the program use this resentment prayer. But in the same breath, I think when you just use the resentment prayer, you're actually resisting. You're saying, this is a sick person. How can I be helpful to him? And then that's it. But you don't really mean it because it's not resolutely. You're just doing the lip service. So what I've found through, doing step 5s is as you create, one thing I will say about treatment centers is they have the harms list in the step 5. And when you see the harms in the step 4, you actually can manufacture the harms into like deep forgiveness if it's done properly. So I know a lot of the harms come in step 8. Made a list of all people we have harmed, became willing to make amends to them all. Going through the harms in the 4 and 5, super important because it gives you a level of humility where you want to change. And then step 6 has a lot more power. So, here's some directions. These are directions, man. Okay? This is when you're resentful. We avoid retaliation or argument, period. Self-restraint takes top priority rating. We don't retaliate and we don't argue. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chances of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. 4th column. Referring to our list again. So now we're back on the first 3 columns. And we're looking at our list again. Putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. We resolutely looked for our own mistakes. In the program, everyone says, like, oh, my part, I see my part, my part. Where does it say that? It doesn't say my part anywhere here. What it does say is we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. In an admirably purposeful, determined, and unwavering manner, we resolutely look for our own mistakes. That's it. So today when I took that call and I acted the way that I did and I sat with it for 20 minutes, I resolutely looked where I was wrong. Yeah, he was not the best on the other end, but I'm not going to say he had his part and then I had my part, because that's not what this is about. This isn't about parts. This is about me only, resolutely looking for my own mistakes. And I handled the call very poorly. And he may have not even answered the call when I called him back, but he did. And then I was able to make amends. Whether he remembers it or not is another story. But, and then it says, where had we been? Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, or frightened? I'm supposed to look for those things. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? This is step 10 stuff, like right now. Where am I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, or frightened? I can't always see all these things. I cannot see self from self. I can't see it when I live in it. I always need to see it from an entirely different angle. A huge part of why we do fives with somebody else is so we can get another perspective on our situation, because we're blinded by the blinders of self. So we need outside perspective. You've heard pillars in the program, God-centered 12-step pillars. If I'm just new in recovery and I call my buddy a pillar and he's on step fucking 3, he's giving me bunk advice and I'm probably getting drunk. Why? Because he's going to give you the advice of that way, how we've always lived. Right? Or I call my mom after like a resentment. She's like, I would have said the same thing. That asshole has no right. And I'm like, you're right, Mom. You're right. I'm calling him back, and he's getting some words from me. My mom doesn't know what she's talking about when it comes to this stuff. She's only doing what we all did. That's why I need to call God-centered, people that have done the steps, people that are going to tell me the truth. And I might not like it because it's going to affect something that I might want, or it might hurt my pride, or whatever. The thing about this is we got to know we're on a mission of life and death here. And if we have it in our deepest concession that we want to change, we'll take that words from the person, and then we'll discern on it and go, okay, this guy actually cares about me. He's not trying to hurt me, but I still don't believe him. So I'm going to call someone else. But then you call 3 more God-centered 12-step pillars, and you get the same advice. Problem's probably you, bro. Right? Problem's probably you and your thinking. So where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, or frightened? Though the situation had not been entirely our fault, doesn't matter, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. No part. There's no part for them. It says it right here. So in the meetings, if you're in the meeting and you're saying my part, it doesn't say that. It says disregarding the other person entirely so they don't have a part in what we're doing. The inventory was ours. Boom. Not the other man's. So we don't take their inventory at all. That's hard to do because I spent my whole life misconstruing the values. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and we were willing to set these matters straight. Do you think I wanted to call Buddy back today and say, I apologize? No, not at all. Shut up, Tommy. Anyway, so that's basically the end of the resentments for the step 4. The 4th column is such, and if you're sponsoring or you're being sponsored and you get to the 4th column and you're not sure how to see it from a different angle, because it takes time. If you're the sponsor, do 4 or 5 with the person, spend the hour and do 4 or 5 and explain it. The sponsee's pride may get all over in the way and they won't see it that way. Just do your best to stay patient and tolerant and try to teach them. And maybe you got to do more than 4 or 5. And for the sponsee who's listening, pray and ask God to open your mind so you can see things from a different way. The thing about beliefs and certain things that are cemented in our pride and ego is we don't want to let it go because there's humiliation in it. We have a disease of validation. We do not want to look shitty. We don't want to look weak. We don't want to look certain ways. So we'll hold on to that, not even intentionally. It's subconscious. And so we'll hold on to it. But the book says we had to let go of old ideas, absolutely, or the result was nil. So we try to let go of these old ideas. Not just bad ideas, old ideas, good or bad. And you only think they're good or bad. And the other thing I'll say about as you encounter situations in your life, the reality is things are only seemingly good or seemingly bad. Some of the worst situations in my life actually taught me the most. And some of the best situations didn't reveal the best out of me. So on the journey, and I'll go back to we agnostics, what is this but a miracle of healing? Circumstances made him willing to believe. What is this but a miracle of healing? The circumstances in life, one by one, if you're willing to bring God in, you will experience the miracle of healing. And although it's like, this doesn't even make sense. Why would I act like this? Why wouldn't I say something? Why wouldn't I stand up for myself? Because you don't understand yet. You follow the directions, trust the process, and it will always reveal itself down the road. And you can't connect the dots. You've always tried to connect the dots right now in your life or in the future. But for us, we can't do that. And you will always see the dots connect as you move ahead. And you'll be like, holy shit, that's why that happened. Holy shit, that's why I didn't get that job. That's why that happened. That's why that relationship broke up. Because as you work your personal pipe to the Sundance pipe, you start seeing that these things were there to teach you some lesson about yourself to heal. Because every relationship in your life is a contract, is a sacred contract for your own journey and healing. But we don't really see that. But if you read the book Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Myss, she explains it really well. You read the book Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukav, he explains it really well as well. You read the book Power versus Force or Letting Go by David Hawkins, you get a real good drift of what I'm talking about. Power versus Force is amazing to show you like how the world is and where we live in the consciousness level. The world that we live in actually vibrates, I think in the book, it's at 170. 170 is in force. It's in fear. And that's what our world lives in. The goal for us is and why we live countercultures. The goal is to get up to higher levels of consciousness so that we see people differently. We see ourselves differently. We're living with more love and kindness and grace and all that stuff. But we don't know. And the thing about the ego is it lives in like lower levels of consciousness. It cannot conceptualize what it's like to be in a higher level. But the person who's raised their level, they can always understand what it's like at a lower level. And so as they raise consciousness, they don't judge the person at a lower level. But the person at the lower level feels judged because that's all they fucking know. Right? That's why whatever you are projecting, that's where you are. And if the other person isn't projecting, they're just cool and you think they're arrogant, well, you're the one that's arrogant and don't really know it. Stuff like that. And like in step 11, you guys have all read it. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So as we understand self and we start removing self through the processes, our thought life is placed on a higher plane and our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. The motive of selfishness, self-centered, self-seeking, self-centered fear, these motivations that hide underneath that you can't see, that you just operate in. You start bringing light to these dark places, and then you start raising your consciousness, and you don't react like that anymore. And then this guy who's watching you says, well, why don't you tell him to fuck off? He just told you to fuck off. Or why don't you punch him back? He just punched you. Because it's not worth it. It doesn't work anymore. And when you think about force, think about Einstein's theory of relativity. For every reaction, there's an opposite and equal reaction. Like I've said it before in the study, some of you guys have heard, I take my phone, I whip it at the wall, it bounces off the wall and dents the wall. That's the opposite and equal reaction. That is, it's physics. It's energy. The energy of my phone hitting the wall creates the exact opposite reaction on the wall. Well, it's the same in all of life. If I say something negative to you, you automatically say something negative to me. If I punch you, you punch me. And when you operate like that, nothing gets done. But when a higher level consciousness guy is seemingly fighting with a guy who's got lower level and he's beaking him off and the guy is kind and compassionate, really what it does is it chips away the guy who's saying nasty things. And eventually you can't say anything more to the guy who's living in love. Try to argue with an elder who doesn't care about your ego. Right? And he'll say things to you that hurt you, because the pain that we feel isn't pain of the spirit, it's pain of the ego. All suffering is pain of the ego, man. And to whatever degree you're attached to the ego on your past or who you think you are, will be more pain. So the goal is to unattach from that and realize that that's not you, which doesn't happen just because you want to. It happens through process and bringing God in, because God has a real power. And when you really want to change, God will give you that power. Me and Gilbert were outside talking, and Gilbert's a street junkie, spent many years on this. No, I'm not. It's not funny. It's just true, right? And he dug in, and he's done really well, right? He's not in the clear yet, but for a guy, year and a half-ish coming up, he's leveled up very quickly, and he's doing a lot of things, and the universe conspires when you're on the right path to give you the things that allow you for the journey of healing. And I'll say confidently, if he runs into an obstacle tomorrow where it's like, holy fuck, this sucks, he's not saying it sucks. He's like, what's this teaching me? Okay, this is the lesson for me. I'm going to resolutely look at my own self, and I'm going to see why this is happening. And I've always said it before, nothing terrible in your life is put in your life to make your life more terrible. It's put there in your life to make your life better. You just don't see it yet. And you won't see it unless you're willing to change and see it that way from a different angle. And there's two kinds of suffering anyway, man. There's always suffering. There's two kinds, okay? There's the pain of growing, which is hard, and that's the lonely road. That's the counterculture one. Or there's the unremitting suffering pain of not changing, which is self. And that's the one that takes people to suicide and drinking and drugs and shit. But the other one where you learn fortitude on how to navigate a situation and you bring God in, fortitude means fortress. You build strength within yourself and you gain real self-confidence through the challenge, which is where you get self-esteem. You think you get self-esteem by buying the fucking clothes at wherever and wearing them and buying that truck, and that's so false. It's not real, man. That's the fake pillars. The word pillar came from me and Jesse. The why I said pillars even to begin with, because I was held up by the world of the material pillars of what you thought of me, what truck I drove, what clothes I wore, what names on my truck, how you thought of me. Those pillars. And when I destroyed my life and I was sitting in the rubble of what I thought my life was, and there was all this smoke smoldering around me because there was nothing left, I was like, who the hell are you now? Who are you now, Bill? You're not fucking the owner of your company. You're not the owner of that nice truck that you drove around in. You're not even barely a father. You're not a fucking husband. You're not nothing. And then I realized those pillars they're not sustainable to hold me up. But then when I started working in recovery and I went through a lot of pain in my first 2 or 3 years, I started realizing that I had, Jesse and my sponsor and a couple other people. And no matter what I did or went through or what other people thought of me based on maybe my actions where I had to learn some painful humility, they still cared. They still loved me. No matter how many times I fell on my face, they were there to fucking hold me up. Those are the God-centered 12-step pillars that hold you fucking up. And they will also call me on my shit because they don't want me to sit in that rubble ever again. Right? That's where pillars even came from. And I could tell you the whole story, which I probably will in step 6, but not right now. That will make you come back for step 6. Okay. So now we're going to get into fear. Notice the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown and Mrs. Jones. My pages are ripped. And the employer and his wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was the evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It sets in motion trains of circumstances that brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? I got to open the book that actually has the page. I just guessed at all that. Okay. So this is a super important paragraph. Fear. This short word touches about every aspect of our lives. It was the evil and corroding thread. Think about that. The evil and corroding thread of our lives. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It sets in motion trains of circumstances that bring us misfortune we feel we don't deserve. Think about a train, and you got car after car after car after car after car. It sets in motion trains of circumstances. All these different circumstances in life, they're all connected with fear. But you might have acted in a fear way down at the beginning, and that fear manifests another fear, manifests another fear, and you set in motion trains of circumstances in your life because you're scared. You walk out of the door of your house or your apartment. Well, I'll use myself. I used to walk out and I'd be fucking terrified the minute I got out. And then what I would do, I'd try to do everything in my power to fucking make myself secure so I didn't have the fears. Fear of what? Fear of being alone. Fear of not having money. Fear of looking poor. Fear of looking Indian and not having money and being drunk, or whatever my fears were. Like I was shot through with fear. So everything I did was me prying and manipulating the world to get me not to have fear so I could have security. The problem is my whole foundation of life was based on fear, but I didn't know it. Why? Because the world of the material just lives like that, which is why our level of consciousness in our society is so low, because fear is a low level vibration. So when I would live like that, I wasn't happy. And my ego always needs relief. So it's always trying to get some type of relief, which is the truck that I bought, the company sticker on it, the money in my bank account, the next job. And then how does that look? Well, I'm telling you about, hey, I got this job and this is how much money I got. Look at my new truck, like blah, 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 blah. Now I can spot it like no problem. It's like, a new guy gets a new truck and you're like, oh, hey, Johnny, how's it going? Like, blah, 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 comes over and all he does is talk about himself and his truck. You show him your new watch. He's like, fuck, I got a new watch. Look at my watch. Fuck, my new coat. Fuck, like it's so apparent now, but I never realized it before. And, maybe something happened to you as a kid. Maybe, sexual abuse happened. And then it set in motion trains of circumstances where you just wanted to protect yourself. So you wouldn't go here, you wouldn't do this, you wouldn't talk to these people, you wouldn't. Fear. And then from all those fears that are branching out, there's all these other fears. And so fear is like keeping you in the box. It allows you not to live. And when we look at what a state of mental goose flesh this used to bring on. Who of us had not variously worshipped money, sentiment, things, ourselves, people? We agnostics. Sentiment is the biggest one. We worship sentiments. So that person with the trauma who's trying to protect himself, and that's a good idea that they think. Because it makes sense. I need to protect myself, so I'm going to set all these boundaries. So every boundary is a fear-based boundary. And what are they worshiping? They're worshiping the trauma. They're worshiping fear. Even if they believe in God, the reality, when you put causes and conditions on paper, I can see you're worshiping your fear. You can tell me you're worshiping God all you want, but you've been drunk half a dozen times in the last year. You're worshiping not God. Because God's a theory. And if God's a theory, we're fucked. So learning about these fears, learning about selfishness, and learning how to turn it over. The thing about it is you don't get what you want. My fear wants to keep me safe, but I don't get that. My lesson is to learn how to get through the fear and talk to people. How do I get through that fear? I got to take a step in the right direction. And where do I get the courage? I ask God for the courage and strength. And I have people around me that help me take that step and say, hey, how's it going? But I don't do that. But then the next time I do it, I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? And then, a year or two later, you're like, oh, hey, how's it going? And you're just running around fucking saying hi to everybody. Right? Or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. This is so generalized that I'm talking about, but it's so much more complex in our lives. But we will worship fear. Go ahead. Yeah, Mike. Tiff. Yeah.
Is that on?
Yeah.
How much does fear play into resentment?
Into what?
Into resentments,
Well, fear's all over resentment.
right?
Yeah. What I've learned, bro, is any resentment that we have against somebody else, it's not really a resentment to them. It's a resentment to ourselves. But to like tell people that right here, right now, in like 5 or 10 years, I can tell you that and you'll be like, yeah, man, I see that. But it's like the journey of recovery reveals things along the way. And the revealing of what I just said, it doesn't happen for a while. But it's a resentment towards ourselves, man. It is. It's ego. Any thought or action that is based in fear is the ego. Even though I may act a certain way out of fear or think a certain way at a certain point in my recovery, it's ego, but I might act or react the same exact way down the road, but it's out of humility and love, but it looks to the person who witnessed both the same. But humility always lies within the beholder. So I could like say like something to you way back and I would say it out of fear. I could say the exact same thing to you today and base it out of love. And to an outside perspective, it looks the same. To them, it looks like ego. But I know in here, and you will feel the energy because the energy of love hits different. And, you know, in many ways, I think that's why, like, my message has been so effective in recovery, because I really do care about people and I tell them the truth. So it penetrates the pride and fear, and they feel that. Even though it might have pushed them away at first, because pride always backs off, but then they'll come back and say, they'll be cool, right?
When you go with sponsees, like, does the acknowledgement or the look at the fears help people with their resentments and realize their mistake?
Yes, bro.
Yeah.
Because everything is self-centered fear. So just quickly on your question, I'm going to flip to, and you guys can too if you have a 12 and 12. We're going to flip to step 7 quick, and it's on the very last page. And it kind of gives us a good description. Perfect question, perfect timing. So 76, top of the page, 12 and 12. As we approach the actual taking of step 7, which never ends, it might be well if we AAs inquire just once more what our deeper objectives are. These are the objectives for all of us. Each of us would like to live at peace with himself and his fellows. We would like to be assured that the grace of God can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. We have seen that character defects based upon short-sighted or unworthy desires are the obstacles that block our path towards these objectives. Short-sighted, I need relief, I need it now. I want this because it'll make me feel good now. Or unworthy desires. They're not really worth it. We now clearly see that we have been making unreasonable demands upon ourselves. A lot of it's ourselves. We beat ourselves on others to give it to us and upon God. Here it is. The chief activator, the number one activator of our defects has been self-centered fear. And what activates it? Primarily fear that we will lose something that we already possessed. And that could be something actually material, or it could be the security within yourself. Losing a friend, losing a partner, losing the security and the protection of your trauma that you're trying to keep. Stepping outside of that is very difficult, but it's a fear nonetheless. And these are the layers that get revealed through a real good program of recovery over years. So again, primarily fear that we will lose something we already possessed, or we would fail to get something we demanded. Living upon a basis of unsatisfied demands, we were in a state of continual disturbance and frustration. Yeah. And think about that. If you're in a state of continual disturbance and frustration, you're fighting with the instincts to keep you satisfied and safe or secure or something. And it's fear. Everything's fear. It all boils down to fear, everything. But it takes time to see all that. Therefore, no peace was to be had unless we could find a means by reducing these demands. The difference between a demand and a simple request is plain to everyone. So, it's fear, man. It's always fear. And as you work the step 10, I always go back to step 10. Step 10 in the rooms, lots of people say, I promptly admit that I'm wrong and I go make an amend. That is not step 10. If you're in treatment and you're doing the other step 10, which is you do a nightly inventory, that is not step 10 either. Step 10 is in the big book and it's on page 84 and it has 5 little steps to it. And if you follow those directions to a T, to the best of your ability, you stay honest and willing and you keep doing what it says, you will change your life. It's the keys to the kingdom. And because you open that channel through that, because you're constantly finding fear, you're constantly finding self, you're constantly looking at what you're thinking and feeling, you turn to God, you ask somebody to help you, like I'll say it, we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. But just what am I thinking? What am I feeling? You got to be aware of what you're thinking, what you're feeling. It's the number one step into this whole thing we're doing. If you ain't aware of what you're thinking and feeling, then fucking nothing changes. And if you act the way that you've always acted and you're not aware of it, nothing's changing. What's going to happen? You're drinking, man. No matter how good you feel after 3 months in treatment, you're fucking drinking. So you watch for those things. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Then it says, first step in the solution, we ask God at once to remove it. You always go to God. You're asking for his power. Even though you might not want it removed, whatever it might be, you want the resentment? Fuck, go ahead, have the resentment. You're in danger. This is about doing it even when you don't want to. Then you do that, and then it says we talk to somebody immediately. It's part of the directions. Barb talks about it all the time. God-centered 12-step pillars. I talk about it all the time. A lot of us talk about God-centered 12-step pillars all the time because it's a way to cap off the dishonesty. Because you can't bullshit a good bullshitter, right? And then they'll make amends quickly if you have harmed anyone and resolutely turn your thoughts to someone you can help. That last part is massively important too. So don't let just the awareness and turning to God and talking to someone be the end of that process. Resolutely turning your thoughts to someone you can help hits the subconscious, changes and builds compassion for other people. And as you build compassion for other people, you start seeing other people emotionally, spiritually sick, and frequently wrong, just like who? Just like me, right? Just like me. And so yeah. Step 10, man. That's where we work it. And then when you work a good step 10, you're constantly clearing the channel. And then the next step is step 11. So if you don't learn how to clear the channel properly, step 11 doesn't fucking have the power that you need. Step 11 has a ceiling on it. And I always say, let's just say step 11 has 10 levels. If you don't do step 10 properly, you're going to max step 11 out at a 1 out of 10, man. Who wants a 1 out of 10 when step 11 is you have the ability to get a 10 out of 10 out of step 11? But if you don't know that you don't know, you don't even know that you're missing 9 levels to an 11. And you think you're getting everything that you can get, but you don't know what you don't know. But once you work the 10, then the God dope allows you to connect more with the fucking 11. And then there's more God dope. And then the step 12 is the service step. It's about serving God. It's about serving others. So we're wired to serve, but we're conditioned to serve ourselves. So through the step 10, we uncondition our service to self. We open the channel in the 11 and we serve. It's just natural. We're naturally designed to serve God's kids. So that's the benefits of these steps. But most people don't understand what I'm saying, which is why I'm saying it so much tonight and I'm repeating a lot of fucking shit over and over. And anyone that's been here from the start, I told them the very first day, I'm probably going to hammer 15 things home over and over and over and over and over. And that's what I've been doing. So, huh? Where's Gord? Gord, we're thinking of you. And so, yeah, let's keep reading. What time we got? Holy shit. Okay. Just let me finish the fear off here, and then we'll move on. We'll finish the night. Okay, I'm sending around that, or somebody started sending around that can. So that can is, it's not a 7 tradition. This is not, none of those funds go to any 12-step fellowship. This thing that I do it's for my podcast, and it's like I take any money that I get here and I put it towards serving in other ways, right? I bought all these cameras and these computers and this all the coffee, and I just do more, and I'll do more, right? I'm not asking anyone for any money. That's not the thing. But if you get value out of what I do and you get value out of fucking this stuff, then feel free, fill your boots. But I don't ask for anything from anybody. But it's not going to any 12-step fellowship. I want that to be clear. It'll help my podcast, basically. Okay. So to try to get this finished here, next page, 68. We think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. Fear will steal your life. Fear will steal your whole fucking life. And before you know it, life's over. And fear took it all. It'll take relationships. It'll take jobs. It'll take people out of your life. It'll put you in a box all lonely by yourself. Fear is fucking deadly. And it should be classed with stealing because it steals life away from us. So it's important to fucking identify fear. So now we're getting into the actual process. Next week when I come, I'll give you guys the sheet for fear that I do, or at least the write-up, so you can see how I do it. I got it from Jesse, but it comes basically out of the book, but he put a little bit of his own spin on it. Works really, really well. It's almost like a resentment inventory, but it's a fear inventory. So 1, we reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. 2, we asked ourselves why we had them. These are directions. 3, wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us had once great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so. For we are now on a different basis. We're trying to get on a different basis of life here. The basis of what? Trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the what? The role that He assigns. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us, and we humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. Think about what that just said. Just to the extent that you do as you think He would have you do, and you humbly rely on Him, does He enable you to match calamity with serenity? What extent? What extent are you going to rely on Him? To what extent are you going to do what you know He would have you do? Are you going to live in a fear and do what you want to do? Or are you going to live with love and do what He would want you to do? The problem with living in love and doing what He would want you to do, you probably ain't getting what you think you want. The unworthy and selfish desire that you think has security in it. Because we learn that in our life where we have the protection mechanisms. And the ego gets relief and loves relief. But just to the extent that you do what you think He would have you do, and you humbly rely on Him and you just trust Him, then you can have His serenity match your calamity. That's very difficult. Takes practice, but it's possible. We never apologize to anyone for depending on our Creator. Never fucking apologize for God. And here's a test. And this, some people don't like this test. I always say, Oh, you love God? You love your God? You and God are real close, you and your God? Yeah, man, I love my God. I love my God. I'm like, okay. And this isn't like to be arrogant. It's just to give you an example. It's like, well, then let's pray out loud, both of us. Fuck, I'm not praying out loud. I'd never pray out loud. And I'm like, well, why? I just pray to myself. I just pray inside my head. And I'm like, well, if you don't have any issue with God, what's the issue? It's always embarrassment. People are so self-conscious and self-concerned that they won't pray out loud. So I always ask people, that's why I ask people to pray out loud. And then once you pray out loud once, because it's so loving and awesome for you, they almost always will again. And then most of my sessions with individuals and with groups, I try to get everyone to pray. Because there's something about words coming out of your mouth, it's like it connects and gives you strength and self-confidence to pray more. And I always say pray out loud. Pray out loud. Hear yourself. Because we've all prayed in our own head. When you pray in your own head, you can easily get distracted because your brain can think many thoughts at once. But the more you pray out loud by yourself, it's way harder to get distracted. And because you're so concentrated and you believe it and you're feeling it, hits the subconscious and you're pulling on the power. So just a little bit of insight there. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think that spirituality is the way of weakness, which I used to think. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us. So we let God demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be, not do. God, what would you have me be right now? Son, I'd have you to be loving and kind and tolerant and compassionate. Through the being comes the doing. We always want to do, but the book is very clear. We ask God to remove the fear. God, I ask you, help me, man. I don't want this fear. Please direct my attention. What would you have me be in this moment? I'd have you be courageous. I'd have you step in and take that step, my son, or whatever, my daughter, and do this. I'd have you go help that person. And whatever it is. But it's through the being that is the doing comes. The being is always spiritual principle. And then it says that once we commence to outgrow fear. Let's begin. It's the beginning. But there's directions right there. You follow the directions. And then you commence to outgrow fear. And you start living more in alignment with the Creator. Any questions or comments? That's the end of that piece. Anyone? Okay. We are going to shut it down with...